So my name is Johann Nallathamby. I've been with WSUT for just over 13 years. Currently, I'm part of the solutions architecture team, so primarily working with customers and partners. So if you guys are interested and if you guys engage with us, I'll probably be one of the first people to kind of talk with y'all. So today I'm going to talk about organizational identity for B2B IAM and beyond. So today, what we are going to talk about, so I think you recognize most of these SaaS services, right? Most of you would be using one or more of these SaaS services, very popular. And then we have these SaaS services, right? So what is the difference, right? I think going by the title of my talk, you should already guess that. So the top ones are B2C services and the bottom ones are B2B services. So today my talk is mostly going to be about the B2B services on the bottom of the screen, right? How you build B2B services from an IAM perspective. So what is B2B IAM? So in essence, so this is the longer version of the definition, but in essence, it's basically managing access to users who are part of a third-party organization that is given access to your applications. So these third-party organizations can be partners, your institutional customers, so on and so forth, right? So they are recognized as part of an organization in contrast to individual users who are your consumers or your employees, right? So that's the key difference. So when we look at the capabilities of this B2B IAM, so we have the traditional B2E IAM, and then we have the B2C IAM, which is a hot topic these days, and then there are capabilities that are common to both B2E and B2C. Now this overlap has been growing over time, right? So these are not like facts stated, written in a rock, right? This overlap is growing and we see more and more functions coming into that intersection of B2E and B2C. Now in that mix, now we have the B2B IAM capabilities. So where would B2B IAM fit into all this? So some people, if you ask some vendors, they might say B2B is a is a overlapping set of B2E IAM, right? Certain other vendors might say it's an overlapping set of B2C IAM, and then there might be some other people who say it overlaps both B2B and B2E and B2C, right? But how we at WSO to look at this is something like this, right? We consider B2B IAM as a superset of B2C capabilities and B2E capabilities. And in the next set of slides, we are going to look at what are those additional capabilities that B2B IAM adds on top of these two. So why it's important to look at it in this way is that it kind of forms the guiding principle in how we architect and design the B2B IAM capabilities in our product, right? So the core functions are shared across B2E and B2C, but it gives an additional set of governance controls on how these capabilities can be used by the different organizations, right? So that's the kind of differentiator that I would say that we have in our platform. So what are the challenges? Very quickly. So when you talk about B2B IAM, first and foremost, you're onboarding not just users, but you're onboarding organizations, and then there are users as part of an organization. So that means not just user onboarding, you need to consider, you need to onboard additional data about organizations, right? The domain and various other things. So there's additional metadata that you need to onboard. Then you need to reduce the friction in access. So when it comes to B2B users, these are not users that you directly know of, right? They're part of another entity that you're working with. And you won't have like physical proximity, or you won't even come to know these individual users. Even in B2C, there is a direct relationship between these users. But with B2B users, you will never have a direct interaction with these users, right? So the best you should do is you should try to give the entity or the organization the capability to manage their users, and you stay away from them. At the same time, you need to appoint designated custodians. While you give the administration capabilities for the entities or the companies, you also may want to have certain representatives in your organization who can kind of contact them, or those organizations will contact the representative in order to get some kind of thing done as part of the platform, like support or something like that, account management or something like that. Then while you give the capability, while you give the full autonomy and the freedom for the organizations to do whatever they want in the platform, you need to have a layer of governance and oversight on what they are doing, so that one organization doesn't screw up the platform for the other organizations, right? So you need to have governance and oversight. Of course, as part of all this, you need to, your goal is to reduce operational cost, right? So that's why you give these self-service capabilities and delegated capabilities. And then, of course, the tools that you use, the SDKs, the clients, and the APIs, all of that should be B2B aware, right? So to make your developers more productive. So what's the solution, right? What's the solution? So if you go to the internet and search for B2B IAM solutions, you will be given out all these kind of names, right? Sub-organizations, domains, organizations, and various kinds of names. For example, in WSO2, we call our capability, the B2B IAM capability, as organizations, and then the levels under that, we call them sub-organizations. But these terms really don't matter that much, right? So these are just jargons. So don't focus on the jargons, right? But look at the solution in terms of characteristics, right? So what's important is what do they really do for you, right? So let's look at some of those important characteristics. What can they do for you? So there is, first and foremost, as I said, organizations should have identity semantics, right? So they are not just a label, so they have an identity semantic. So when you say identity semantic, at a minimum, they should have attributes. So you have name, legal name, registration number, address, so on and so forth. These are like organization level attributes. These are not really individual user level attributes, right? And then, of course, there can be custom attributes like subscription. So if you are providing a service and if your organization is consuming your service, there's a subscription level that is attached to the organization. So that's just an example. Then organizations have a structural relationship with the entities that they manage. So typically, if you take something like a group has more of a functional relationship, whereas organizations have a more structural relationship with the entities that they manage. So what we mean by that is they tend to change less often, right? So if you are working for an organization, you don't move between organizations that often. So it's more of a structural, more permanent relationship. Sometimes there's a legal binding as well, but the functional relationships are more kind of temporary in that sense. You also have hierarchical organizations. So in the more large organizations, you might not be able to treat them as a single entity. Sometimes you need to recognize sub-entities. So these can be like regional entities, they can be different BUs, product lines, or different divisions, whatever. However they want to recognize their structure, you need to be able to represent that in the IAM system. So hierarchical organization management is important. And then there is this notion of centralized governance and decentralized enablement. What this means is that you want to be able to provide more and more capabilities, more and more autonomy for the sub-organizations and the sub-organizations below them, and you want to stay away from managing all this, but still you want to be able to set some governance rules, governance policies on what they can do, right? So that's what we mean by this. And then we have delegated user lifecycle management. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. So if there is an organization, there are thousands of users within that organization, you as the platform provider or application provider, you don't want to go and manage individual users within those organizations. What you want to do is you want to give the administration rights to a company admin, and then the company admin is responsible to manage the users within the company, right? But he can't manage users in another company, right? So that boundaries should be there, and within the boundary, they can manage whatever they want. So you have the right to decide what you want to delegate, whether you want to delegate user management, whether you want to delegate application management, which means they can create new applications. So you have the full control, right? Depending on what your business is, you can do whatever you want. Similarly, you can delegate entitlements management. So the admin of the company can decide which user gets what role, right? So that's entitlements management. Then there are cases where you want to appoint a colleague of yours as a kind of an admin or a custodian of a set of organizations. So you are delegating access to your colleague, which is what we call mandatory delegation, because you are delegating, you as the parent organization, you are delegating access to your child organizations. Then we have the other version of it, which is called discretionary access delegation. So there are cases when the sub-organization users want to invite a certain user from the parent organization to maybe check on something, do some impersonated support, something like that, right? So there are cases for that. What's important is when the same user is invited into multiple of these organizations, the roles and privileges that they get in each of these organizations can be different, right? They don't have to have the same role in each of the organizations. They can have different roles. Then on a per organization basis, you can customize the login, the registration, the SSO policies, the password management policies, the account management policies, etc., etc. So almost everything can be customized on a per organization basis, but still, again, the important rule is that the governance is there. So in case you are modifying the login flow, you still can ensure that the login flow is meeting the level of assurance too, so as indicated in this diagram. So they can do whatever they want as far as the login flow is concerned, but the outcome of the login flow should be a level of assurance too. So unless there is some multi-factor authentication, you are not going to let them access the application, right? So more flexibility, but more governance as well. Then of course there is branding. I think we've covered this a lot in the tutorials and in the sessions as well. So at a per organization level, you can brand. So each organization, when they access the service, they see a different branding, right? Which is very different from B2C applications. Then of course you need audits and insights at a per organization level, as well as at a higher level, at an overarching level. Across the entire platform, you can get a summary of audits and insights. And then there are some of these advanced features, such as B2B collaboration. So there are certain industries, certain organizations, more of a closed platform, where sometimes certain users from a certain organization get temporary access to another organization for certain resources, right? So this is very common in some government institutions. When there are government employees working for a department, they may get access to another department temporarily for a restrictive set of permissions, right? So this is collaboration, which we sometimes come across. And then you have this pattern of B2B ecosystems. So what's different here is that you have two or more kind of organizations. So these are not organizations of the same kind. These are different kind of organizations or heterogeneous organizations. So some, for example, you can label them as consumers, they are consuming services, and some you can label them as providers who are providing services. So this is what we typically call like a marketplace, right? Somebody is providing, somebody is consuming. So what's significant here, or what's important here, is that what does the B2B IAM system have to do with all of this? The resource that they publish and the resource that they consume, that is the resource that the IAM platform needs to govern, right? And a good example of this is the API management platform that we have, right? So in the API management platform, the resource that we publish and consume is APIs, right? So the IAM system needs to be able to say who can see what APIs, who can subscribe to what APIs, so on and so forth, who can manage what APIs, so on and so forth. So the authorization of these assets become really critical. So that's what's unique about these B2B ecosystems. And then you have this other kind of variation of B2B, which is called B2B2C. So technically what is B2B2C is that there's two or more organizations coming together to provide a service for the consumer, right? So there are multiple organizations and the consumer is able to access different services in order to fulfill the function that he wants, right? So a single login, a single customer with a single login can access different applications from different organizations in order to fulfill the functionality, the requirement he wants, right? So there is single sign-on across different organizations in B2B2C. And then we go beyond B2B IAM. So so these are the traditional set of capabilities that we look at, the standard set of capabilities we had with B2B IAM. Now we are going slightly beyond, which we typically can't call it B2B IAM, but because of that architecture approach that we took, which I referred to in my first slide, we can provide more capabilities than what our competitors can offer. So let's look at some of those interesting capabilities. So first, you can run our solution as an IDaaS, Identity as a Service. So if you take Asgardio, our SaaS platform, IAM SaaS platform, it is an example of an IDaaS. So if you download our on-prem, the downloadable software, Identity Server, you can set it up in this kind of a way, where each customer you're servicing will get its own isolated space to manage its own IAM resources. So what's unique about this is that you can run this kind of a service within your company as well. So it's kind of a enterprise level IDaaS, right? Whereas Asgardio is a public IDaaS, right? Anybody can consume. So you can run an enterprise level IDaaS where different products or divisions or whatever will come and consume IAM as a service. So what it's doing is you're providing IAM as a service, not some other business service or not some other application as a service. You're providing IAM as a service. So this is like one extreme of the spectrum where everything is kind of isolated within that organization and there is no connection across organizations. So that's what we call IDaaS, right, or Identity as a Service. Now the following patterns we are going to talk about, there is some resources that are going to be shared across organization, which makes it a little more interesting, right? So the next pattern we see is divisions, right? Now the example I'm showing here is WSO2. I know Sanjeeva is against this word of divisions. He said not to use this word within WSO2, but I didn't find a good alternative to explicitly convey what I wanted to explain here. So basically, if you take WSO2, we have different functions, right? We have customer success, we have engineering, we have pre-sales. And each of these functions consume a common set of applications, like for example, the G Suite suite of applications for our email, slides and everything. And then each of these functions have their own services as well that they consume. So customer success uses ServiceNow, engineering uses Figma, and then pre-sales uses Lucidchart. So each function has its own IAM requirements, as well as WSO2 as a whole has its own IAM requirements. So still it's within a single platform. There's a central IT administrator, the WSO2 DigiOps team, who is able to manage all this, but each function gets its isolated workspace to manage their own IAM and to decide who gets access to what, right? So this kind of a complex architecture can be supported. So another pattern that we can support, so these brands are well-known brands, so Nissan and Infinity. Anybody knows what's the relationship is, Nissan and Infinity? I guess you guys know, right? So Infinity is the luxury brand of Nissan, right? So they are from the same parent company, Nissan Motor Corporation, and these two are, one is the Nissan brand and other is the Infinity brand, right? So why I took this example, because Nissan is our customer, and these login registration portals are running on our platform, so we know how it works internally. So that's why I took this example. So this is called house of brands. So when I say, so this is a marketing term, house of brands. So when you say house of brands, it's one of the marketing branding architectures. Typically, when you say house of brands, you will think of brands like P&G or Unilever, so on and so forth, which have various brands. But Nissan is not a house of brand. As far as I know, they have just two brands. But technically, the architecture is the same. They want to show them as two completely different brands. So there's the Nissan brand and the Infinity brand, but internally we know it's part of the same platform, and there is a common set of administrators who are managing this platform, which is from Nissan Motor Corporation, and then most often than not, it's a common set of developers that are managing these portals as well, right? But the consumers are segregated. So if you are a Nissan consumer, you don't get access to Infinity. If you are an Infinity consumer, you don't get access to Nissan. So clearly what's different here is the consumers are segregated, but the developers and the admins are common, right? So this is one pattern we can support. Okay, so Marvel. So any Marvel fans here? All right. Star Wars. Star Wars fans? Okay. So what's common between these two logos? Going by the talk? Yeah. So, and then we have these two as well, Hulu and ABC. What are all they? All of them are brands belonging to one parent company, and that's Walt Disney, right? So they are all part of Walt Disney, different brands, but they use a single login across all the brands, right? So it's the My Disney account. If you sign up for My Disney, you get login access to all the brands, right? So this is what we call sub-brands with a microsite architecture, right? So look at how this is different from the house of brands architecture that I showed. So each brand has its own website. Probably it's going to have its own developers. Walt Disney is not our customer, so we don't know how it works. But it's part of the same platform that we know. It's a unified identity. And there is a common consumer base, which is different from Nissan. So there's a common consumer base, which is a My Disney consumer who is logging into all these brands, and then all these brands have its own website, so their own configurations with the IAM system, but it's a common platform. So this is different to the previous architecture. And then this is another service that I use, which I took for this example, which is called LaunchKey. So I travel quite a bit, so I use this service a lot. So LaunchKey is a kind of a loyalty program across like different lounges in the world. So you can directly sign up with LaunchKey, or they also have partnerships with different banking institutions. So I use them as part of two banks that I use, DFCC Bank and HNB Bank, which is two leading local banks. So when you go to sign up for LaunchKey, depending on which URL you use to access them, if you use the DFCC URL, you get a different branding. If you use the HNB URL, you get a different branding, right? So this is what we call co-branding. Two companies coming together in order to provide a service. They are not part of a single organization structure. These are two completely independent organizations coming together to provide a service. So what's different about this? So it's the same B2B SaaS application. They are not two different websites. Same B2B SaaS application, same consumer base, same administrators. The only thing that is different between the two is the footer or the branding part of it, right? So the same application is differentiated by the branding of the two organizations. So this is slightly different to the previous two the architectures that we saw. So yeah, I think that's it. That's all I wanted to cover in a nutshell. Yeah, thanks. So I'll be around. Let's catch up if required. Yeah.